My love of heroes began in 1998. It was Easter, and my family told me this story about a guy named Jesus who laid down his life to save mine. As a kid who attended dozens of funerals growing up, I was familiar with the concept of death. I was floored by the idea that someone would be willing to die in order to save me. I believed the story they told me and became fascinated with the idea of heroes from that point forward. Like a lot of kids, I dreamed of becoming a superhero. A forward-thinking planner by nature, I taught myself to throw boomerangs, did somersaults, and relished my short stint in a martial arts class. As I got older, though, I started to realize that most of the world's issues couldn't simply be punched in the face. I started to realize that villains, those who consciously and actively exploit others for the sake of their own self-interest, do exist, but that being a hero was a lot more complex than I had imagined. Slowly, I began to reshape my definition of heroism. I began to appreciate the ways Bill and Melinda Gates leveraged their resources to tackle pressing global issues. I began to follow the Stanford Social Innovation Review to learn of the new and innovative approaches organizations were using to bring about social change. I began to note things like the 6.9 billion volunteer hours just 30% of Americans logged with formal service organizations last year. I began to appreciate philanthropy, the giving of one's treasure, talent, and time for the betterment of others. Philanthropy, a word at its root that simply means love of people. This everyday heroism became my new aspiration, and these days you're more likely to find me working on social ventures than designing a new pair of tights. Too often, though, I'm less of a proactive hero and more of a passive bystander. But what does it mean to be a bystander outside of the world of comics and superheroes? Well, consider this. There are materials in our phones that were fought over in a war-torn country before being smuggled up the supply chain and into the product you carry with you every single day. Most of us, if we spent any time downtown this morning, passed by half a dozen people living off the street without pausing to even look them in the eye. Our city is one of the top 5 hubs in the nation for human trafficking, and most of us couldn't spot a victim of trafficking, let alone know what to do if we did. We are all bystanders to evils and traumas taking place all around us. Me, I'm still learning. I can't explain to you all the ins and outs of my cell phone supply chain. I'm still figuring out how to better care for and acknowledge the homeless people I come across on the street. I can't explain to you all of the signs of human trafficking. I am a bystander, but I'm not content to stay one. You see, the vast majority of us are bystanders. And bystanders fall into 3 camps. There's the apathetic, those who don't care enough to get involved with a particular issue. There's the uninformed, those who don't know enough to care. And there's the unprepared, those who care but don't have the courage or the training necessary to make a positive impact when it counts. All of these groups are passive and inactive. But when good people do nothing, evil triumphs. I'm still an avid fan of superheroes, though, and reading comics gives me hope, because the vast majority of heroes start out as bystanders. Take Peter Parker's Spider-Man, for instance. When Peter first gets his powers, he's not interested in using them to better the lives of other people. He's apathetic. But when his Uncle Ben dies due to Peter's passivity, he learns the valuable lesson that with great power comes great responsibility. Meanwhile, before becoming the kick-butt hero Wonder Woman, we find Diana Prince living on the mythical island of Themyscira, oblivious to the issues taking place in the rest of the world. She's uninformed, but when she learns of the evils and injustices taking place outside of her island, she chooses the difficult path of working to address these issues cross-culturally rather than hide from them. Lastly, 14-year-old Virgil Hawkins is like many of us. He's aware of some of the issues that plague his community, and he cares, but he doesn't know how to help. He's unprepared. But when a little metahuman mutation gave him superpowers, he became Dakota City's most electric public hero, Static. Now, if you don't know Static, look up the hit show Static Shock and thank me later. My point is this: bystanders have the potential to be heroes, and heroes, those who consciously and proactively work to lower their ignorance and better the lives of other people, are simply bystanders in the process of reform. All of us are bystanders in one issue or another. We suffer from implicit bias. We judge one another based on skin-deep characteristics rather than the content of one another's character. We perpetuate sexist paradigms at times without even knowing it. We forget or ignore the plights of those less socioeconomically advantaged than ourselves. All of us are bystanders. All of us come up short. All of us need grace, undeserved support in the midst of our weakness. All of us need someone who's willing to come alongside us and call us to be the best versions of ourselves. A guy named Rodney Cisco helped do that for me. Rodney was the director of my undergrad institution's Office of Multicultural Development. He faithfully served our campus community for over 3 decades, educating and advocating on behalf of students. At just over 6'6", Rodney was known as a gentle giant. He was sharp, insightful, and gave wonderfully compassionate bear hugs. My sophomore and junior years, Rodney and I would meet every 2 weeks to talk about my work as the Student Government VP of Community Diversity. We would also talk about life, and quite often, our shared love of superheroes. Working with Rodney gave me a front row seat as to what it looks like to patiently and consistently chip away at apathy, ignorance, and unpreparedness while actively caring for the needs of one's community. When I was tired or discouraged, I would go to Rodney's office and he would remind me of who I was and who I had the potential to become. When I didn't know how to prepare for the year, Rodney would give me advice and book recommendations. When I planned to hang up my cape senior year, Rodney encouraged me to give being student body president a go. He taught me that you don't have to be perfect to be a hero. You simply have to be intentional in the ways you proactively care for the human beings around you. We all need someone like Rodney in our lives, someone who's willing to step beyond heroism outright and to become a cultivator of heroes, someone willing to call out the best in us and also offer grace. For Spider-Man, that was his Uncle Ben. For Wonder Woman, it was her aunt, Antiope. For Static, it was his mom, Jean. But for someone else, maybe it's you. Apathy can be tackled with empathy. Ignorance can be tackled with well-packaged information. And unpreparedness can be tackled with strategic catalysts for action. So take the time to listen to stories that personalize social issues and share these stories with your friends. Dig a bit deeper into issues so that you can understand their complexity and explain the complexity to others. Rally your friends together to volunteer once a month for a nonprofit, or raise money for public charities through services like CrowdRise and the Roundup app. Engage in small acts of everyday heroism and inspire those around you to do the same. Give the bystanders you know a reason to care, truths to hold on to, and simple next steps. For example, blood was shed over materials in our phones. The next time you go to buy one, look up the corporate social responsibility page of the manufacturer, and be sure to recycle your old one. Even these small actions signal to the producer the value you place on ethical business practices. Example number 2. Over 5,000 people in our city live off the streets or in shelters. Far more live doubled up together with family and friends. Carrying a few extra snacks on hand to offer is a low-cost way of showing you care. Meanwhile, providing human dignity by pausing to look someone in the eye and learn their name is free. Example number 3. There are women, children, and men being trafficked for sex in the communities around us. Keep an eye out for those who don't seem to have control over their time, resources, or movements. And save the number to the human trafficking hotline to your contacts, just in case the need to use it ever arises. Stop being a bystander and cultivate heroism in your spheres of influence. Engage in genuine dialogue. Give the bystanders you know a reason to care, truths to hold on to, and simple next steps. Because bystanders have the potential to be heroes, and many need the support of someone like you to help them on their way. Thank you.